Hello and welcome back to A Celtic World, Celtic chat on a planetary scale. We are the YouTube channel that celebrates the fact that Celtic have fans all over the planet. So, especially for first-time viewers, who's here today and what corner of the world do you represent? Stephen.
Okay, Gav. I'm Stephen, and I'm coming to you tonight from Sydney in New South Wales in Australia, which is on the east coast. And happy to be here.
Tell us what you've been up to recently. You've been watching the women's game in Australia.
Yeah, I've been kind of engaged in the Women's World Cup, which finished last night. I was at the World Cup final last night between Spain and England. I was delighted that England didn't win it, being surrounded by Englishmen. There can't be anything worse than the English when they win something. It's just terrible. It's to be avoided at all costs. Not that it happens very often, but when they do, it's just unbearable. So I actually had a Spain jersey that I bought. My son actually bought it for me years and years ago as a present. And it was a perfect opportunity to wear it. So I got a few funny looks in the ground. Let me say that. People remarking, that's a strange accent for a Spaniard.
Very good.
Yeah.
So it must have been a fun tournament then, the whole thing. It seems to have been a great success.
Yeah, they're calling it the best Women's World Cup ever. It was really well attended. The atmosphere was great, and I hope that the gains that the game over here has made, because much like the US, it's treated like a minority sport here, football, and I hope that the government can see what it means to people and how it can bring people together, and I hope it's chronically underinvested here in terms of grassroots facilities, especially for the women's game, and I hope that this World Cup kicks on to something better. And that the game here goes from strength to strength.
And then we move on to Dano, who's Chicago boy. And where are you? Are you in Chicago, Dano? Tell us.
No, I wish I could go, man. Tickets are like $3,000 to fly back home this summer. Russian airspace is closed. It's crazy. Demand is still sky high since the pandemic. I'm in Korea, Gwangju specifically, the 5th largest city in the Republic of Korea. Not to be confused with the People's Democratic Republic, of course.
No, we would never do that. So you're of Irish American stock, is that correct?
Yeah. My father's side of the family is 100% Irish. And yeah, my mother's side of the family is like all sorts of stuff. Scottish, Cherokee, German. It's kind of crazy. But
wow.
Yeah, I was raised basically an Irish Catholic in the US. So,
and like, were you raised in the way that we see on TV and movies, the Irish American thing? Was that always an element to it? Was there?
It's your classic plastic patty upbringing, as you guys would say over in Ireland. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and it was pretty typical Midwest stuff, to be honest.
And in the city of Chicago, as the evening shadows fall, are there people dreaming of the hills of Donegal?
Indeed there are. It's quite an Irish community all over the Midwest, but yeah, especially Chicago. I'd say Chicago, Boston, and New York are like the big Irish American cities.
And nowadays, Chicago has a reputation as being an extremely violent place.
Always has.
Does it deserve that?
Chicago's a violent place. Yeah, America's generally a violent place, more than anybody from Europe is used to, for sure. All the gunplay and stuff that goes on. I would say Chicago's always been a violent place. I mean, from way back in the day to Al Capone to gangs of the 60s and 70s up until today. It's gang central, but it's a lovely city, man. It's fantastic. I wouldn't discourage anybody visiting. It's not like you're just going to get shot randomly, like hanging out in a big tourist spot downtown or whatever. Most of the stuff tends to be very isolated. but very
What's
intense.
What's the St. Patrick's Day parade like in Chicago? Is it big?
Massive. Actually, there's two of them. There's the Southside Irish Parade, and then there's the Downtown Parade. And the Downtown Parade, they dye the Chicago River green, and all the big politicos and stuff come out for that. The mayor and, you know, all the city council people and statewide representatives, senators, congress people. You know, Barack Obama will show up. Yeah, it's a big thing. And the garbage cans are just full of empty cans. Just everybody's out of the street, just drinking away, man. So yeah, that I would definitely recommend if you haven't been to Chicago. It's
I've
quite
been to I've been to a Paris Day parade in New York, and I've been to one in Boston, but never Chicago.
Those are both.
I must get over there.
Yeah, those are both massive as well. Any of those three, like I said, I mean, Irish people are all over the U.S., obviously, but I would say those three cities are like the big concentrations. Any of the old northern industrial cities, Cleveland too, Detroit, huge Irish communities. So
I felt as if the New York one was just a bit too long. It takes about 3 hours to pass one spot, and there's only so many pipe bands you can listen to.
Right.
Before you go, I've got to go to a pub, man. This is too long.
Most people do.
It was freezing.
Yeah, it's still it'll still be cold in Chicago too. But yeah, I've been to the New York one. It does go on forever, and I don't think anybody stands out. Do you stand out there for the whole time? I mean, most people are popping in and out of the pub and just, you know, they can't take the whole thing. You go for a drink and then come back out. Hey. The Southside Irish Parade is more of a kind of local phenomenon, but the last time I was there was years ago. It was before I came to Korea. It was like 2003, but it was really funny because the big electric utility there, Con Ed, they had a float, Commonwealth Edison, they had a float in the parade. And when it came by, everybody started booing them and throwing cans and stuff like that at them. It was great. But yeah, that's way down on the south side in this big old Irish neighborhood called Beverly. That's definitely like getting the local neighborhood flavor down there. It's really fun though.
Well, that's interesting. We could talk about this stuff all of this stream if you want, rather than talk about Celtic. I'm sure we're not that keen to get into it today.
It is a more pleasant subject than what we are here to talk about. Right. Man.
Well, we're going to get into it, but just a quick note that to the viewers, we live stream on a Monday and a Thursday at these times, which I will just put up on the screen. Where are you watching from? Tell us in the comments. Get involved. We've only just begun, and if you subscribe right now, you can have bragging rights that you were among the early adopters of a Celtic World way back in the day when it was just an insignificant little channel, not the huge, media conglomerate that it's become sometime in the future. Right. So I could play a little snippet with Brendan Rodgers, sort of encouraging people to like and subscribe, but I'm not sure if that would hurt us or harm us in the current environment. Maybe we'll give it a miss for today. And we'll get on to the first subject, which unsurprisingly is about the game. Successful Squirrels, Celtic all at sea. Now, the name of this episode, Rodents Killed or Thrilled, refers to last week when we were poking fun at the squirrels on the Kilmarnock crest, and we joked about the prostate exam fingers, referring back to our original conversation at Celtic Down Under, Steve-O.
Yeah.
Well, I can confirm that all three of tonight's participants are getting it right up them at this point. And the rodents indeed were not killed, but are thrilled. And so they should be, having beaten the holders. So they deserved it. Well done to Kilmarnock and their fans. Steve, I know you love Kilmarnock, so it's not at all through gritted teeth that you're congratulating them today. Okay, well, let the inquest begin. So the first question we're going to chew over, and I will throw this to you, Steve. I would ask you to opine, if you will, in your learned opinion, on the thorny issue of why are we so shite
Well, that's a very, very thorny issue. I'll need you just give me a second till I Google what opine means. I'll be right back with you. No, yeah, I'd look at it's a difficult one, isn't it? It's really weird, and I'm kind of torn between the notion that what it's a new coach trying to implement new structures, coupled by the fact that we've got a lot of players out injured. There's a lot of guys just playing their first or second game for the club, and there's a lot of people not really sure what they're supposed to be doing. But the flip side of that is it also appears to me to be a continuation of the form we were showing at the tail end of last year, when we were pretty terrible for the last couple of months. A lot of that get put down to the fact that we'd pretty much clinched the league at the start of April. But even before that, we weren't great. And I'm just wondering whether it's just a team that's just sort of reached the end of its sort of like lifetime, and it needs to be refreshed. Now we certainly need some new additions coming into the team. There's certain players just completely off form, and there was a lot of talk over the summer about certain players that were going to be great under Brendan. We haven't seen it yet, and I think the performance yesterday was just next level terrible. We never ever looked like scoring, and we only had a couple of shots on target in the game. And even after we went behind, we just never looked like getting back into the game at all. Notwithstanding the Stonewall penalty that we never got in stoppage time. But I think that would have probably been rough justice, because we didn't deserve it and didn't create anything. We were just far too pedestrian in midfield, far too slow and deliberate. And it's just not working at the moment. But one of the things that stood out to me for a couple of games now is, I don't know if you remember when we beat Rangers back in February of the previous season, and the Rangers, I can't remember who it was, commented after the game, maybe it was one of the commentators, about how quickly Celtic take throw-ins. And we had ball boys, feeding the ball straight back to the player as soon as it went out the pitch, and we were off and away again, putting through pressure on teams. See, if you look at us now, the amount of time we're taking over a throw-in, it takes forever. It's Greg Taylor inching up the line, looking for someone to throw the ball to. It couldn't be more different from last year. And by the time you finally pick out a throw-in, the defence is set, the structure's in place, and everything just breaks down. So it's not working. It's not really quite time for panic stations yet. But we really need to get some new players on board, as well as getting the injured players back.
Well, let's not talk about transfers just yet. We'll come on to that after we're done with this section. But yeah, when Rodgers came in, he talked about the style of play not changing a great deal, didn't he? He sort of said it would be quite similar. But as you say, it's chalk and cheese. We're so used to watching Ange Ball last season and all of the elements of that made it such a good watch. And this is painful. I mean, did you find this painful, Dano, to watch? And to what do you attribute it to? Is it a combination of all those things that Steve just mentioned? And will it improve given time?
I think it will. You had a lot of new guys out there yesterday, first year at the club, etc. I mean, with the Ange Ball thing, and we never stop, and the ball just getting fed to us, Kilmarnock was, even down to the ball boys were kind of killing that yesterday. There was a moment where the ball went into the bench area, the technical area or whatever, and one of the players from Kilmarnock clearly just kicked it away down the field from, I think, Ralston. It went out of bounds, or maybe McGregor, and they were obviously pissed, and it was going on all game. So it felt really disjointed yesterday, though. The midfield, the link between the defense and the strikers is just not happening the last two games. This is the first time I've watched McGregor in a while have two pretty awful games in a row. And the midfield, it just seems disjointed, because midfield without Hatate kind of providing that spark, I think, is creating a very kind of slow, disjointed, and just bad attack. I mean, we had the ball for 70% of the game. We got 8 shots.
That's amazing.
It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. But how many passes were completed in the attacking area, in the attacking third? You could probably count it like with your 2 hands. I mean, it was just really bad yesterday. I mean, there was no feeding of the attack going on whatsoever. And credit to Kilmarnock. I mean, they frustrated us. I definitely thought that was a penalty on Haksabanovic. But yeah, in the end, we didn't really provide any impetus to deserve a good call at that point. It was the worst I've seen them play in like a while. But that's an interesting question about, is this a continuation of how they were playing at the end of the season? I think the jury's still out on that, but they were pretty bad towards the end of last year, barring, say, the cup semifinal and then the final. But yeah, yesterday was awful. But I guess the jury's still out on, is this a continuation of their bad form from last year? Because it hasn't looked great so far.
Yeah. So the difference I'd say is that at the end of last season, the last quarter, whatever the season, the system helped us through in a way that we're not getting any assistance from the system at the moment. It's just all down to the players to gel. We'll come on to that in a second, but I wanted to pick up on a point that you both mentioned, which was the penalty claim. There was that incident that didn't even go to VAR, did it? Or no, it did go to VAR, but it was decided there was no case to answer. The thing that didn't go to VAR was the elbow into the face of Greg Taylor, which resulted in him going off and having blood, and he was off the pitch when they scored. And then also the incident of whether or not, if a bit of your shoulder is over the thin blue line, whether the goal should be disallowed. Now, we can talk about those, and we will. But I think it's worth noting, and Steve probably knows what I'm going to say here, is that that's the first game where we've had dubious VAR decisions go against us for a very long time, in my view. We've had the rub of the green for VAR for the last third of the season up until this point of this season. So I'm not going to cry about that too much. Are you, Stephen?
Well, yeah, I'm going to cry about it a bit, to be honest with you, because when you say rub of the green, what you really mean is we got a correct decision by VAR. That's not the rub of the green. That's the normal situation. What you seen yesterday was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, how can anybody have a look at that, even at full speed? But you've got a VAR technician sitting in front of a screen there who's got the ability to slow it down, look at it from several angles, and for him to just decide that no case to answer, it's an absolute nonsense. Now, every time we seem to score a goal, there seems to be a forensic examination by VAR. It seems to take 2 or 3 minutes. They're looking for offsides, potential handballs, anything to stop us, to take a goal away from us. And yet they spend 15, 20 seconds looking at that in the last second of a game. Was just so bizarre, absolutely bizarre. But at the end of the day, I do agree with you. There's no point in crying about it. I've been following Celtic for 40 years, and we've seen this time and time again, year after year after year. And the only people who can do anything about this are the club. The club have to do something about it. Celtic are the biggest club in Scotland, and we are the ones with all the power. We are the ones that bring all the fans in. We are the ones with the highest commercial output. And if the club's not prepared to do anything about it, why should we cry about it? And it will keep happening. So we just have to get on with it, and we just have to just take it on the chin, as old Tony Mowbray used to be fond of saying. But nothing's going to change. But I don't agree with you. We've had the rub of the green from VAR. I think we've had what was due to us on a couple of occasions, but nothing. We've not had any. I can't think of one wrong decision that's went in our favour.
Okay.
I'm hoping to be corrected if you think.
Well,
you can.
I mean, I can remember there was an incident, wasn't there, when Cameron Carter-Vickers was all over some guy in the midfield, and But did the guy in the midfield get penalised or something for backing in? Do you remember that?
Oh, like it was kind of like a headbutt or something too.
Yeah, he stuck his leg up high or something and didn't realise that Cameron Carter-Vickers was diving over his shoulder. And
Right.
his
I remember
head was
that.
low down. He got sent off. Anyway, we're not here to do a forensic examination of last season. I'm just saying, for the first 2/3 of last season, we had a long and growing list of grievances with VAR. And then those grievances fell away in the last third. Maybe that's a better way of saying it. There were fewer incidents that we could point to as we've been cheated by video-assisted Rangers, hotline to the lodge. That's what I was going to ask you, Dano. Dano, did you see the picture of the Kilmarnock manager with the officials afterwards, all smiles and some sort of, shaking hands in potentially a way that was a bit funny looking?
No, I didn't see that. It wouldn't surprise me. I'd just like to take the chance to point out that I can't cry today. I'm too dehydrated from all the whiskey I did while I was crying. What I drank that I was crying last night. So I'm tearless at this point. You just got to get on with it. But I think Steven's right, man. We've only had VAR working the way it's supposed to the last few months of last season, and now it just seems like Scotland's refereeing is back to form with us and how things went yesterday. Not that I'm blaming the refs. That's just too cheap, but it should work better than this. And it's still not great.
Yeah, I'm not blaming the refs either, but to give an example of how VAR is supposed to work, like the first goal we scored against Aberdeen at Pittodrie last week, which got flagged for offside, I had a look at it on VAR and it was well onside. So that's how VAR, that's the correct way VAR is supposed to work.
Right.
So that's not work. That's not a rub of the green we've got. That's what VAR working correctly. And that's just the way. But I'll put it this way to you, Gav. Try and answer this one as honestly as you can. See if Rangers were playing in that situation and the same incident had happened, what do you think the outcome is?
Well, it's an obvious answer to that.
It's penalty Rangers, isn't it?
It's got to be. I mean, I think it should have been a penalty. I'm not saying it shouldn't. Yeah. I think it should have been a penalty. There was clear contact and he went down. I just, if he hadn't gone down, did he go down? He did a terrible dive. Let's be honest, Haksabanovic. I don't know. Was it earlier than that? It must have been earlier than that.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether that might have coloured everyone's view and thought, there's that bloody diver at it again. But, VAR is there to eliminate all that, and you can see his foot is impeded by the defender's foot, and he therefore goes over.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It's
plain as day. Just plain as day.
It should have been a penalty.
Yeah.
It should have been a penalty. But as you say, it would have been rough justice. I don't think we deserved anything from the game. Now, the question is, will it work in our favour ultimately? Will we look back at this and say, that was the best thing that could have happened during that time under Rodgers? Make that case for us, Steve.
Okay, well, I mean, the sort of talk round about the socials is that this will send a message to the Celtic board, and that we need to spend a bit of money in the remaining 10 days of the transfer window. And I know we'll get on to talk about transfers in a little while, but that's really the only positive that I can see coming out of it, because in terms of who's to come back in the team, it's only really, you've got Hatate to come back in the midfield. Then you've got Carter-Vickers to come back in the defence. But I thought the two centre-halves, particularly since, they've got about like 2 appearances between both of them, I think they've done okay. I think they've done fine. So we've our first choice left-back playing. We had our second choice right-back. So obviously Alistair Johnston's still got to come in there. But the problem is, if you look at the bench yesterday, our bench was truly horrifying. With from just a complete lack of talent on our bench yesterday was just horrific, and the complete lack of anything that you would say that guy can turn the game in our favour. I can't remember off the top of my head all the names that were there, but it was Haksabanovic, it was Bernabe, it was Forrest, It was David Turnbull. And what Kil'd does in the Champions League last year was the drop-off between our first 11 and the ones behind them, the backups. It wasn't good enough. We had too many injuries. Couldn't get Kyogo, missed a few games. Carter Vickers missed a few games. And we just couldn't cope with our second string. If anything, we're even worse now when you see the drop-off, because we've lost Aaron Moy from midfield, we've lost Jota, and we've lost Callum Starfelt. The guys that have come in, they might turn out to be as good as these players. But at the moment, as things currently stand, we're weaker, and our bench is substantially weaker. So I hope this is a wake-up call. It's a pretty expensive wake-up call because, we like to win trebles. We like to, we like to boast about the amount of trebles we've won. The club likes to boast about the amount of trebles we've won. But it's gone already. We're not even out of August yet. And that's a major disappointment. So I hope that there's a change of direction. And I hope this is just down to teething troubles. But I have to say, I'm starting to get a little bit concerned. And we'll talk a little about that and a little bit more about that in a while.
Okay, I'm going to make a case for something and tell me what you think of this. We've gone from Ange ball to this very quickly, and it's a jarring transition. So I think all of us are a bit stunned by what an unpleasant experience it is watching Celtic so far this season. My theory is that Ange isn't bothered about players, right? We know that they're pawns in his game, cogs in his machine. They're given very definite roles, and it's drilled into them to do what they're told. And if they do so, the machine runs smoothly and success follows. Brendan, on the other hand, has a very personal approach, right? He wants players to express themselves. Their roles are not so rigidly defined. He expects them to bring their creativity onto the park. So when the players get the ball these days, they don't have a single Ange-type instruction in their head. They're kind of on their own out there. And if the movement ahead of them isn't good enough by other players who are not laser focused on their one job, then it all falls apart, So that's where we are. We've gone from a well-oiled machine with almost automaton cogs to a group of individuals who are not in the same wavelength, don't have a defined group strategy, and don't really know each other's natural games or personal decision-making well enough to be a cohesive force. Now, maybe that cohesion will come in time once they do play with each other more and get to see each other's movement and what have you. But something you mentioned earlier, Steve-O, all this talk of Rodgers improving the likes of Abada and Maeda might be completely wide of the mark. What if they were good at being cogs, but cannot be trusted to make all their own decisions themselves? They both have strengths, but neither gives you much confidence that they're going to do the right thing when they're on the ball. At least that's my view. Like Maeda, he brings a lot to the team. All that running he does, stretching the defense, everyone's in a panic, all that stuff. But there is one part of football that he's not very good at, and it's called kicking the ball, which is quite fundamental to the game of football. Kicking the ball in the direction you want it to go with sufficient pace to get it to its destination. That's a big problem, if you ask me. And my concerns are not that we've just lost some key players like we've outlined, but we've sort of convinced ourselves that there's this sort of net benefit from having Brendan there. He's going to improve all these players. But I'm worried that they might have been good under Ange, but they're going to be exposed as not very good under Brendan. Am I worrying unnecessarily, Dano?
I don't know. The jury's still out on that, but I would say this isn't something to trip about too hard. I think it's just, we've had a few players leave the club. We've got a lot of new faces in there, and even on the field yesterday there were a lot of new faces. So I'm not going crazy about it. What I am going crazy about is Maeda, and okay, yeah, he's bad at kicking the ball into the net, which is a pretty key feature, but his first touch is also awful. And it has
So bad.
always been so clunky and clumsy. The ball always ends up a couple yards away from him that he obviously didn't intend. That's my main concern with Maeda. And yeah, you can talk about the industry and all of that all you want, but if a guy doesn't have good first touch out on the left wing, you've generally got kind of a problem there. So yeah, I don't know. I'm concerned about Maeda. Like, I think that's my main concern right now with the whole team. He's just looked completely sub-ziggy these first few games this year. Awful. So
Yeah, you've heard of King Midas, I'm sure, the man with the Midas touch. What about the man with the Midas touch? Everything he touches turns to goal kicks.
Everything he touches turns to possession for the other squad. Yeah.
Are you worried about Midas, Steve?
Yeah, I'm 100% with you there, Dano. He has a first touch like a baby elephant. It's just absolutely hopeless. And there was the notion that he can play as a striker needs to be put directly in the bin, because he can't. His finishing is nowhere near good enough to play through the middle for Celtic. So it's been floated around now that he's going to be the sort of backup striker to Kyogo. And that can't happen. He's no way can he play through the middle. He plays through the middle for the Japanese national team, who are a team who generally play on the back foot and play a bit of a counter-attacking game. And he's good at that. He's an elite level presser. His pressing is elite level at Maeda. There's very few people kicking around the European game as good as Maeda at pressing high and pressing defenders. But that's it. That's what he does. And everything else is just sort of average. And to be fair, if he was able to finish and he was able to control a football, he probably wouldn't be playing for Celtic. He'd be playing for one of the top European sides. He'd be a magnificent player. But he's with us. But we need to know. Ange knew how to get the best out of him. He's very good when you play against a team like Rangers, who are strong down the right hand side, and he generally does a good job on them. And he can be good in a defensive sense, but the limitations that he showed last year are still there, and exactly the same thing goes for Abada. A couple of decent showings pre-season isn't going to turn them into an automatic first pick, and he's not going to be a replacement for Jota. He spent most of the last season coming off the bench because of Jota's form on the right-hand side, and just because Jota's left doesn't change that. The limitations are all still there. He can't go past a man, and his decision-making at times is very poor. He's got some qualities, like he can get on the end of crosses, and he's got a decent goal return. But it's not enough, and it's certainly not going to be enough in Europe. And I hope, again, getting back to what we were talking about earlier, I hope people are starting to realise that like pre-season games are very different to competitive matches. And the sort of limitations that these two guys have are really being on show for everyone to see.
Yeah, it's a worry that getting the best out of them may have been something that Ange did.
But Ange never played that bad, though. He was on the bench under Ange. So,
he
Ange
threw him on at the last minute against tired legs, and then he got artificially high stats, you could say.
That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But starting them on the right hand side, I was surprised they started Abada, because I thought Yang deserved a start, and I think I really hope he starts Yang on the weekend, because I think he deserves it. I think he showed up well, and he done okay yesterday again when he came on, and I think he's showing up much better than Abada, and I think he really does deserve a start.
Hacksaw too, I think it deserves a start, man. I would like to see Hacksaw get a start out on the left. He's one of the few players that had any industry yesterday. And, he's only on for like 25 minutes. I couldn't believe Rodgers started subbing so late. I mean, it clearly wasn't working by like 55 minutes. So get somebody else in there. But I hope Hacksaw can see some more minutes. I mean, one problem with Abada and Maeda is they simply can't kick well with their left foot. I mean, they're fine on their right, but man, the left is just, it's like me kicking it, man. So Yeah, I don't know, but they both have incredible weaknesses. I see a lot more in Abada than I do in Maeda, though, especially lately.
Yeah, I'm sort
The
of
only
wondering.
problem with Haksabanovic is he was given a chance to get a couple of starts at the tail end of last season and did nothing.
Yeah.
So he shows he's another one who shows his best form coming off the bench. It's just that, we need better than that. We need somebody who's going to put pressure in Maeda to be starting on the left-hand side. Sorry, Gav, I cut you off there.
Well, it's a similar point. I was going to say I have a sneaky suspicion, and it's not based on anything other than suspicion. Small data set, incredibly small when you consider we haven't seen Tilio. But it wouldn't surprise me if Yang and Tilio played a much more important role this season, ultimately, than we think they're going to currently. That we could be starting with those two by Christmas time.
I could see that, especially Yang.
Yeah, because we haven't seen Tilio, but at least they're both look like they're tasty footballers from what I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
And,
yeah, I mean, it remains obviously we got to see anything from Tilio. I mean, he's injured, I guess, but yeah, Yang, I'm loving what I'm seeing from him so far.
Okay, well, speaking of Yang and Tilio, that brings us on to our next topic. Now, Brendan's said quite a few things when he came in. When he first came in, it was a great wave of excitement, and he talked up our European journey that we're going to go on with him and how he wants to make progress in that. And there was money in the bank, and we all had whatever expectations we individually had for our transfer activity. And he said a few things recently which added to the poor quality of play, the injury list, going out of the cup, are starting to give people tighter sphincters than were being experienced beforehand. He's talking about the pipeline and stuff. I can only, he didn't say I can only, what were his exact words? Something like the reality of it is, I will coach whoever comes through the door here. And it was all a bit sort of passive, and, the suggestion being that so far he's had very little hand in all of the signings. Is that his way of saying what's coming next? Is Brendan Rodgers putting a stamp on things? Or are the naysayers and the doomsday mongers who are saying, look, we've heard all this before. This is Brendan and the board, and he's sending out messages to the board. I don't need a million wingers. Is this a horrible anxiety-inducing sense of deja vu? Or is that just scar tissue that you might refer to, Steve-O?
Yeah, look, there's so much about this transfer window just doesn't make any sense. And I just can't wrap my head around it. And that's like the sort of main source of my concern. As you mentioned, when Brendan first came in, he was talking about European progression and taking the next step in Europe, which led a lot of people to think, well, okay, to do that, we're going to have to spend a bit more money and bring in some real quality. That's why Brendan's back. He wouldn't have come back under any other circumstances. He had options down south, as he says himself. He could have went to another Premier League club, became a Celtic. But then a few weeks later, the language had changed to being realistic about European competitions and what we could achieve. And then a few weeks later, again, as you mentioned, he's talking about being handed players by Celtic, and he's just to coach them, and suggesting he's not got an awful lot of input into the players that are coming through the door. Now, that to me is an absolutely bizarre suggestion. I'd be surprised if there's another football club in the world works like that, where the manager is just handed players with very little input into it and told to go and coach them and make a team out of them. Because if it's not Brendan, it's picking the players in. Who is it? Is it Matt Law? But how's Matt Law qualified to know what kind of player is going to fit into Brendan's system or not? He's just not. Now, for me, the job of the recruitment team is to provide information to the manager, including data, including, background, player backgrounds, availability, cost, how the players profile, what their background's been, what their career stats have been, and then the manager makes a call. Yes, I want him, or no, I don't. But to have this suggestion that someone else is signing the players and giving them to Brendan, I mean, we're paying Brendan, by all accounts, £2 million a year. You don't need to pay a guy £2 million a year just to coach players. A massive part of being a manager, being an elite level manager, is talent identification. Picking players. And the question still keeps cropping up: why would Brendan come back for this? Why would he? Because he could have got another Premier League job. There'll be a manager sacked in a few weeks in the Premier League, and Brendan would have been probably first in the queue for it if he had just sat tight in his nice wee house in Mallorca and not put his hand up for the Celtic job. I don't understand it. And I don't understand. And, we've got 10 days to go in the window. And it's all right for people. Like 2 weeks ago, people were saying, "Oh, don't worry, there's 3-4 weeks to go in the window." Week later, "I don't worry, there's 2 weeks to go in the window." Well, now we've got 10 days to go in the window. And we've seen this movie before. And we know how it ends. And it ends with us scrambling about in the last day of the window looking for loan signings. And it's not acceptable. It just isn't. And the window's starting to get away from us. We haven't addressed almost any of the problem positions we have. And we're running out of time. And, the fact, take goalkeeper, for example. I think most people can agree now we need a new goalkeeper. Right? But even if you do go and sign a goalkeeper between now and the end of the window, he's not going to hit the ground running. He's going to take time to settle into the system. So, in all likelihood, we're going into the Champions League with Joe Hart in goals. And in all likelihood, we're going to Ibrox on the 6th of September with Joe Hart in goals. And I'm not comfortable with that at all. This should all have been resolved weeks and weeks ago. And I just can't understand. Some of the language Brendan's coming out with now is just bizarre. And I can't get my head around it.
Okay,
Sorry,
well, I'm going to throw it over to Dan. Dano's going to tell us not to worry because it's a 2-tier system. There's the pipeline, and then there's Brendan's players. And Brendan's are all going to be more expensive and higher quality, and they're all going to flood in these next 10 days. And we'll look back at this and laugh. Go for it, Dano.
Yeah, no. But I will say that, that entire press conference and what you want to read into it, his language is so kind of blasé and coy at the same time. It really struck me as having very little meaning in the end. And everybody kind of read into it what they're seeing in the transfers that have been in, or the transfers that haven't happened at the current time. And I don't know. But yeah, 10 days left is a big change from pretty much having our transfers in at the start of the window under Ange. There was no drama. The word would start to get out a couple weeks before January, a week into June or whatever, and they'd just be in. So yeah, it does feel like we're kind of back to the old transfer system, and the window has definitely gotten away from us. And I really can't figure out why. It's just strange.
Well, it hasn't slammed shut just yet. And,
yeah, right.
We have history of getting good players in at the 11th hour. Sometimes these things just take time. Sometimes these good players who started off the window with lots of options end up at the end of the window with fewer options, and a decision has to be made, and that could turn out to be to Celtic's benefit.
Yeah.
So I'm clinging to that life raft of hope that my intro to asking you that question will be borne out, Dano, even if you wouldn't grasp it with me.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, I'm not grabbing the brass ring just yet on that one, but we'll see what happens.
My problem with all that is I think it's a load of bollocks. To be honest
yeah,
with you.
I mean, that's a problem if you think that.
See this notion that good players don't move until the end of August. It's absolute crap. Good players move at the beginning, the middle, and the end of the window if the deals are right and the conditions are right.
Well, maybe they don't move to Celtic until the end of the window because they've got Fenerbahce breathing down their neck and Borussia Mönchengladbach.
We've signed guys in June. We've signed great players in June. We've signed great players in July, and we've signed great players in August. So we need, as a club, to stop underselling ourselves as well, because we can offer a lot to a player, especially from particular leagues. I mean, we're playing next year when the Champions League's restructured, and we well hope we're in it. There's 8 Champions League games. Now, there are not many teams in Europe can offer a player that. We've also got 4 games a year against the Huns, which is widely regarded as one of the biggest derby matches in the world. So that's another 4 games. And there's games against Hearts at Tynecastle, Aberdeen at Petrodig, all high pressure, good atmosphere games. Yeah, there's crap. You have to go to Ross County on a Tuesday night in the piss and rain. But every league's got that. Teams in the Premier League are going to have to go to Luton Town on a Tuesday night in the piss and rain. I mean, nobody's liking that either. So this notion that we're such a footballing man, we're not playing football in the Faroe Islands. Do you know what I mean? We can offer a lot to a player, including good money. We're offering good wages to players. And this notion, for me, that we have to wait till the last days of the transfer window before some guys theoretically going to say, oh no, I've got nothing else on offer, I better sign for Celtic.
Yeah.
Nah, I'm not having that.
Well, that's the only hope I've got. Steve-O, would you not leave it?
Yeah.
You have to destroy all my hope.
The club does chronically sell themselves short, though, like as far as how we project ourselves to other teams, and also when we're selling players, the prices that we just drop our panties for and sell players, it's ridiculous. I mean, totally undervalued. It just goes on and on. I don't get why Celtic doesn't play with more cojones in the transfer market. I'm like going in and coming out,
Here's a comment from David. Did Brendan get shares in Celtic as part of his deal? Maybe that's the change in tone. He likes how the bottom line is looking so far.
Yeah, well, he told me he did my, phone call with him last night. So
it could be. I mean, it could be he just wanted to, there was a bit of talk that his partner wanted to live in Glasgow again. It could be that. Maybe he just wanted the Celtic job and is quite happy to, to play along with whatever the board are handing him. But this is going to end. I mean, if we don't get this sorted between now and the end of the window, and we don't at least sign a goalkeeper, a left back, a left winger, a central midfielder, and a striker, to be honest, that's a list of people we need now. Then it can turn really nasty really quickly for Brendan. You know what I mean? See if we start dropping points in the league, maybe get beat at Ibrox. There's a lot of goodwill being generated by him coming back. Brendan's back. A lot of let bygones be bygones from how he left in the first place. That stuff will all come back to the surface again really quickly, and things turn to shit.
The other thing is, later in the year, we're going to have a problem when the Asian Cup is getting played for in like January. All those Korean, Japanese players, they're not going to be in Glasgow. They're going to be out in East Asia. That's worrying too.
Yeah, they definitely is. I mean, I think there's only 2 weeks that we need to be concerned about. There's only a 2-week overlap between the Asian Cup being on and the winter, the January window. Sorry, the January shutdown finishing. So I don't think that's such a huge concern. But it is still a concern. I'm more concerned with the fact that Kyogo is reportedly carrying a shoulder problem. Which
he looked like he had a problem with it yesterday too.
Yeah, if that pops out in a game, if he takes if he gets a bad tackle, goes down heavily on his shoulder and it pops out, we are all different flavors of screwed.
Yeah.
What are the flavors of screwed?
Yeah. What is in the flavor rainbow? Yeah.
And none of them taste good.
Jesus. All right. Well, look, on that depressing note, let's move on, shall we? Let's have a little lighthearted look at what's been going on in the world of Celtic social media. Dano, if you've got anything you want to add into the private chat, like a link or anything, we can investigate
that's all right. I'm just going to mention something I saw post-game last night.
Well, go ahead, mention that while I'm setting up the screen share.
Yeah, you were talking about tightening sphincters, I believe, earlier in the show. I think there were a few that I saw last night. And shout out to Ryan 118. He doesn't filter anybody out. He doesn't ban them. I mean, it's like the Wild West in the chat during his post-game live. And there was a guy that I think was, I don't know, literally jerking off, having a wank to just typing in "fire Brennan, get rid of Brennan" like every 2 seconds on this chat. Man, people were just raging last night on the post-game live platforms. I watched a couple of them. And but one guy in particular typing in some variant of "fire Brennan" every 2 seconds was over the top, man. It was over the top.
Our friend from the very first stream that we had trouble with in India, Denny.
Yeah.
I saw him saying that on social media. It's like Brendan out, and I'm not even joking. So it'll be interesting if we can ever establish comms with him. It'd be quite interesting to hear his opinion.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if things start looking up and you've got a blown out sphincter and you're still at the party, it can get a little embarrassing, man. It's a little
let's
heavy.
move on from sphincters and let's go over to Steve to talk us through this tweet that he wants to highlight.
Yeah, I thought it was just a nice moment from the Women's World Cup final last night. It's got the Spanish player Jennifer Hermosa on the ground, and she's giving Chloe Kelly from England the middle finger. And I think that sums up how we all feel about proceedings.
Amen. Yeah.
I don't think they could have caught that. That's one they literally should hang in the Louvre, that one.
Dear. What would Prince William make of that? Sitting at home with his sister on the bench, giving his best wishes to the English female team.
Yeah, that's caused him a lot of grief, hasn't it?
Particularly there's a couple of
the Queen of Spain turned up to watch them.
There's a couple of things I wanted to draw attention to. I saw this clip on Twitter. It's from 1977, where Johnny Doyle is sent off for hitting the referee, or for the referee getting in the way of his cross. You should be able to hear this.
To take it. Shot one out in front, a chance for advancing. McCullough out to Doyle, handball. And Doyle driving the ball in. Referee was in the way.
Could have stood there all day and tried that and not got it right again. So, and the referee sent him off.
Johnny Doyle being booked. Sent off. A sensational and tragic end to the match. Jockstein out to take it.
He got sent off for accidentally hitting the referee with the ball. It's not outrageous. That was during a match against Ayr United, 1977. The referee, Bob Cuthill, awarded a free kick for a handball against Doyle moments before that happened, just like seconds before that happened, but play continued. And then the cross hit the referee in the face, knocking him over. And when he recovered, he issued a red card to Doyle, who reacted furiously, storming off the park and down the tunnel. The dismissal was later rescinded, but Celtic lost that game. So if we're worried about a bad decision for Haksabanovic, one of his, collapses in the box, which probably was a penalty, but there were worse decisions in the history. Steve-O, do you remember that, or are you aware of that incident?
Yeah, I do. I've heard that. That's quite a famous one. And that sort of sums up what we put up with at that time. And things were a lot more blatant than they are today. And the technology that exists has lessened the referee's influence on these sort of things. But these guys were just blatant Rangers fans refereeing Celtic games. And if do yourself a favour and don't read any of the comments under that tweet. Because I don't know if you know the history of Johnny Doyle. Johnny Doyle was a player for Celtic in the 1970s, a kind of local hero, massive Celtic fan, a bit like Tommy Burns, really. Just totally devoted to the club. And he actually died in an accident at home where he got electrocuted in his loft trying to do some home maintenance, and some of the comments from Rangers supporters, I suppose you could call them, under that tweet are just truly horrific, and it's just made me sick to my stomach. I was watching that one today. Actually, it made me sick to my stomach.
It was only 4 years after this footage, and he was 30
He's
years
still a young
old.
man. Yeah.
That kind of
And-
that kind of ridiculous situation reminds me. Did any of you guys see Ange on like this sports kind of talk show, like a more comedic in Australia? I think it was during the World Cup break last year, but they showed a clip of Ange arguing in the Japanese league where he's got a translator. Obviously, the Japanese ref is listening to the translator making the arguments that Ange is making, and he gives the translator a yellow card.
Brilliant.
Unbelievable, man. But yeah, those kind of ridiculous refereeing decisions, man. I mean, as long as they're on the pitch, it's just going to happen. But
this incident comes up every year at this time when this is the anniversary of it happening, and I remember a previous year the same tweet was tweeted out, and in the comments under it, the referee's daughter weighed in and suggested that her father had been unfairly vilified as a dirty Hun, basically, and it was she sort of intimated that there was more to it than meets the eye, and I don't know. She was a bit cryptic about it, and she got absolutely laughed out of the place. But
Like it was done on purpose or something.
Yeah, I think it was like maybe. I think she maybe said it was more to do with something Doyle said to the referee after it happened, because when you see hits him, the ref goes down, Doyle goes over to the ref, and he kind of stands over him for a while, looking as if he's looking to see how he is. But, I suppose, there's always the off chance they said something to him, but I guess we'll never know.
Well, the high point of Johnny Doyle's career was scoring against Real Madrid in the 79-80 European Cup. So he achieved some great heights during his short life. On a more comedic note, I don't know if you saw this. Oh, I should have mentioned that last post was from Lil Zay, who does a lot of good stuff. Do you know what movie Lil Zay was in? The original, where he's getting that name from? City of God. Have you ever seen that about the favelas in Brazil?
Yeah.
It's great.
There's a song that was on one of the FIFA soundtracks called that as well.
Oh,
it's kind of like a grime tune with some bazillion samples underneath it. Really good, but yeah, that rapper's called Lil Zay.
So from Lil Zay to AJ Celtic, who says, I was bored, so edited long hair and a beard on all of our players. Did you both see this?
No. I did. I had a little laugh at this one. It's good.
Absolutely. It's so convincing. I mean, you did a great job. There's obviously our Lord and Savior, Brendan Rodgers.
The blessed Brendan.
Is he our Lord and Savior, or is he being roundly crucified as we speak? It's hard to tell. But there's Joe Hart.
Not the Messiah. He's a very naughty boy.
Joe Hart.
Hart's pretty good.
Alistair Johnson. That's mad looking. Look at Alistair Johnson. He looks very different.
Yeah. It's like a 70s roadie or something.
CCV looking like Hagrid.
Yes.
Larger, as he's becoming known, looking like I don't know what.
Looking older than 11.
Looks a bit like Giorgio Samaras, doesn't he?
Greg Taylor looks pretty good. That's a good look for Taylor.
He looks a bit like Paolo Nutini.
Cal Mack looks like he's dumpster diving.
Yeah, he had a rough year here. That was stuff.
Nothing can stop Matt O'Reilly looking gorgeous, even the scruffiness.
He's rugged. He's rugged.
And then we have Hatate, Dyson Maida, Hugo. There's no way Hugo can muster a beard like that. I wouldn't have thought.
No.
No. Strictly peach fuzz.
Abada looking like a South American footballer from the late 70s.
Yeah.
And then O looking like a cult leader. Got some sarin gas in his back pocket.
That's another guy I suspect cannot grow any facial hair. Like,
That's deeply disturbing.
I mean, that's wild to look at. Yeah.
There's Turnbull. Turnbull doesn't look too good.
Yeah, strung out
Ralston.
under a highway underpass in a tent.
Welchie. Bernabé. Actually, Jamesy looks pretty good there, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think that's an actual picture, isn't it? I don't think that's been doctored.
Yeah, no, that's legit. Yeah, that hasn't been doctored at all.
Haxa.
Hacksaw, that looks natural, right? I mean, basically.
So kudos to AJ Celtic for putting all that effort in. Jeez, do you imagine how long that took?
that's a lot of time being bored, a lot of free time going on there.
Yeah, so credit to AJ Celtic for that. All right, lads, that just about does it for this week. That was a good wee chat we had. Oh, just before we go, here's another comment. Gerald
Whoa.
McEwen, I was at that game. Wow, Johnny Doyle was sent off. Shocking refereeing, really bad then. Yesterday's refereeing proved hee-haw has changed. So there you go.
I'll also point out that the game you spoke about against Real Madrid, I was at that game.
Oh, okay. Well, full points to you and Gerald. Dano and I are both very impressed.
Yes, we are just bowing at your feet.
About
Very
10
good.
points to me.
All right, lads. Thank you for that. And to all the viewers and people who left comments, thanks very much for joining in. And I assume we'll see you both back here next week, where we will be discussing the latest game and all the transfers and all of that good stuff. So hopefully it's a bit more positive when we meet again, don't you think?
It's going to be nothing but victories, huge signings. It's going to be riding the rainbow.
We'll call
After
the next
next weekend.
episode the Kieran Tierney special.
Yes. Oh my God.
He's coming home.
Okay,
love that.
well, we will chew it all over next week. So we'll see you both then, and we will see the viewers again. And we thank them for being part of Celtic World.